Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have an action-packed guest and topic. We're going to look at the world of sales and marketing and growing our businesses from all different perspectives. Now, Diana Selguson is going to join us today. Diana, you are a CMO, you are a marketing advisor. But one of the things that makes your background fascinating is you've worked with startups, you've worked inside of PE companies on the investment side, looked at the portfolio companies, helped them grow from a marketing and sales perspective. And today we're going to bring that entrepreneurial perspective that you have, that startup perspective that you have, that investment perspective that you have. And what do we learn from that as marketers and CROs and CEOs of our own companies that we're trying to grow? But what I'd love to do is, before we dig right in, I'd love to have you maybe explain a little bit more of your background first.
Yeah, I think you captured it quite well. I would say I'm a very entrepreneurial CMO. My background is, I think, 15 years within marketing now. I've been an entrepreneur myself. I've been in startups and scale-ups, investment-backed companies. Right now with a not an investment-backed company, probably the first time in a long time. Yeah,
Fantastic.
So that's, I think, the
I want to start right out with, you've got a very, I call it like a dual perspective, right? You've got a traditional C-suite perspective, because as a CMO, we're a part of that C-suite. You've got your kind of departmental or your marketing perspective, and then you've got the investor perspective as well. How do you merge all of those and look at market trends and think differently?
Yeah, a big question, but absolutely. I've seen a lot of companies, especially as an investor. I met a lot of companies. I read so many pitch decks, and also, so half time I was working as an investor, and half time I was actually like a marketing advisor, helping the companies that we invested in to build the marketing from scratch. So that's the base. But I think I've seen both trends going on and off, like e-com booming during the pandemic and then struggling after for various reasons. I've seen how media loves to enhance like the huge investment rounds, and then I know what's happening behind the curtain and behind the scenes. So I've taken like a lot of those valuable lessons to my way of working as a CMO. I think especially I'm really evaluating the companies that I join myself. I really make a due diligence. You can ask my bosses today. They were going crazy during the interview process with me because I was really due diligencing everything and asking for every document, talking to the owners and so on. Yeah, wrapping all that experience up, I would say maybe that's the main thing now, like choose wisely where you work for whom.
Well, I want to talk about that more. I want to talk about that due diligence process, because as CMOs or other C-suite executives, we're actually not interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing us on an ongoing basis. But I'm fascinated by the fact that you've helped companies write pitch decks, you've helped them create their marketing plans, you've evaluated their pitch decks, you've evaluated their marketing plans. From an investor's perspective, when you're looking at a pitch deck and they're talking, obviously a big part of that is the plan to go to market, right? And you're a brand new company, you're an unknown brand. So marketing is an extraordinarily important part of how you're going to grow that company. From your perspective as an investor, what were the kinds of things that you were looking for that were triggers for you?
Yeah, again, coming back to the trends, going back and forth. But in the end of my investment career, I would say I was really looking into companies that were on a way to profitability or were profitable and already had been going on for a short period of time or longer, but having a clear road to profitability. I think that's one main thing. And as for marketing, of course, like what is the go-to-market strategy? Who is planning and who is doing it? And can you do the groundwork yourself? Are you able to invest your time and efforts in the beginning until you actually can have the possibility to hire colleagues and build a team? But you need to be able to do the groundwork yourself in the beginning and know more or less, at least have a hypothesis on how to do it and where to start. So very like organic.
And what are some of the red flags, right? When you were looking at these presentations, I myself, I'm a B2B SaaS founder. I don't know how many pitches I've done, right? And you're always trying to get it very concise, like a 9, 10, 11 page pitch deck. You're trying to say the world, convince everybody you're going to light the world on fire in a very short period of time. What are the kind of red flags that you saw in organizations that you could give as advice that are the don'ts? Don't do this. Play heavier in this area. Show us, give us confidence that you can do X or Y.
I think definitely like everyone wants to become this unicorn company, and that's my first allergy. Like if you're starting with a few dollars of turnover and talk about becoming this unicorn, it's great to be ambitious, but the goals need to be realistic, and there needs to be a way like, why would you become this unicorn company? It's so easy to say, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs think they have to say it in the pitch decks to even be seen and heard. And of course, that may be the truth for some investors, but for early stage companies like really startups, I would be very cautious in talking about unicorn. We're going to grow exponentially and so on when you haven't maybe sold anything yet. So that's
And,
definitely a red flag.
but typically we invest in people first and the idea second. Because if you don't have the right team to take a good idea to market, it's not going to work. And vice versa too. But we invest in the right people. In terms of looking and investing in a sales capacity of these companies in an organization, a lot of companies are going to say, basically, the more quota carriers we have, the more we're going to scale and the more we're going to grow. What's your thinking in terms of evaluating these companies that are talking about the capacity to go to market and scale and grow from a sales perspective?
The first traction, like actually being able to sell, that's the main thing. You need to be able to sell your product or services. And whether that being someone picking up the phone and cold calling, or if you have a good SEO strategy and already get leads that way, I would say it doesn't really matter as long as there is a way to scale it. If I hire 10 more in the sales department, or if I invest in not doing all the SEO myself, but I actually hire someone who is an expert, what's going to happen? So I think a scalable solution, but you need to prove that you can sell your product or services. And of course, now when I'm speaking, it's obviously more like consumer or B2B related. It's not maybe med tech or stuff like that, that obviously requires much more time and not being profitable for many years because there is so much development. So
I'm glad you brought that up, the idea of profitability, right? There's the value of profitability over kind of versus the large investment rounds and when you get that investment. What are your thoughts on the kind of the hype surrounding large investment rounds and the profitability paradox that you and I talked about before?
Yeah, I'm quite fascinated by like large investment rounds and how they are described by the media, and like it's a badge of honor almost to do those. And of course, it's amazing. You get the visibility, you get tons of money, like your idea and your effort is worth so much. But also it shows that you're actually not standing on your own feet. You need help. You're not profitable. You're not making enough money to keep your business going. So to me, and that has been a shift definitely for myself and my view on it as well the past few years, but standing on your own feet, building step by step something that is scalable, but also profitable, that is worth so much. And I'm so much more impressed by entrepreneurs being able to do that versus entrepreneurs having these big investment rounds, but never becoming profitable and not really seeing how to get
I'm
there.
sure a lot of the companies are coming to you and say, well, to get to be profitable, here's why we need your investment. And there are companies that spend years and years before they're profitable. Huge investment. I mean, Uber was an example of that. So in terms of prioritizing investments in companies with a clear path to profitability, do you have to show profitability, or is it the kind of thing where it's okay, but you've got a good story, not only on why we're coming to market, but a good story on how we're going to become profitable in this market if you invest in us?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, that would be the best scenario, that the business is going, there is a way to profitability, or it's a company that already is profitable. That to me has a much higher value, actually. But then, of course, as an entrepreneur, you also need to consider external capital always has strings attached. You need to choose wisely as well where that money is going to come from, what it implies. You're not going to make all your decisions on your own anymore as the CEO of that company. So all these things have to be considered as well, whether it's worth it.
And I
to
know
speed up
that
the
as an
process.
investor, you look and you say, okay, there's going to be challenges that we can't foresee right now. There's going to be problems that we have to overcome. How do you assess how adaptable and resilient businesses need to be and are at the time when they're pitching you? How do you assess that?
I think depending, of course, on the history of the company, but if you can see that they have been bootstrapped and really worked hard, and also if the entrepreneur is really actually is passionate about the business idea, if it's someone who is really driven to make it happen, that of course gives the impression that that should be a resilient company.
Now I'm gonna kind of flip the tables just a little bit and say, what are common pitfalls that C-suite executives make without going through investment rounds, the experience of having the questions, the oversight, the tracking, the playbook that an investment company would bring in? If we haven't gone through that experience, what are the things that those kind of executives don't understand or don't know as well?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to become a bit blindsided by the media, what's written about companies and the investment rounds, and that you feel like, oh, it would be so cool to work for this company with all these investors and big money involved. But I think if you're actually considering that, make sure in the interview and recruitment process to really speak to someone from the board, speak to one of the lead investors, really make sure that the expectations they have and the plans for the company is something that you feel is realistic, at least. There will be a lot of pressure. Investors, they don't give away money just for fun. They want to make money. So it's going to be a lot of pressure usually in those companies. There needs to be a CEO that both stands up for the company and the team and the business, but also, of course, get along well with the board and the investors. So really try to meet someone from the board, one of the investors, talk to them, make sure that they seem like good enough people for you to actually commit to doing, because it's going to be hard work. And it's so important to be aligned with what they believe is marketing as well. Do they want to go for brand building, or is it conversion, or is it both? And what do they think is possible to do within a year or 3 years or 5 years? So align
I
on
love that because
expectations and goals.
as a non-investment backed startup, we can have longer horizons. We can be much more accepting of where we're going to be in a year versus 2 years because we see the growth, we see the potential, but investment companies want fast returns. There's a horizon that that they're looking at across their portfolio companies. I think that aligning on those expectations is one of the biggest things. I know that was big for me. I was very happy with how we were proceeding in a lot of different ways when the investors were not. Those could have two very different perspectives. How to get the most out of your board members, because that's an area that most companies don't have a board if they don't have investment, right? They have their founder led. So what is the value of having a board member? And then how do you get most out of that value?
It's definitely their experience and the networks, and that they are interested and passionate, hopefully, about the business they're being the board of. But definitely, those things are the most important, and you really want to tap into those aspects as well. And to remember, I mean, board people are also normal people. They also like to feel important and feel that you're listening to them. So take advantage of that, ask a lot of questions, ask them to introduce you to media outlet or contacts or someone to, I don't know, do marketing collabs with. So definitely use the network and the experience of the board.
And, I like that, board members have connections. They have experience across different industries that lots of times has a big benefit to you. One of the things that we want to have as startup founders is we should want to have more perspectives, right? It can be, we can get myopic in our viewpoint. And I speak from experience on that. So I think definitely the value is there. But would you agree that, we have to cover some of the basics first, right? And we've got to make sure that, we're talking about come into those meetings prepared to talk about where are we on sales, right?
Mm.
How are we doing against the quota that we've established for ourselves, right? Cover off what we need to know before we go into and ask for things that are maybe nice to haves or, could be beneficial to the company and their expertise and
Mm.
things like that. That's been my experience. I just wanted to ask you about that in terms of board members can get very impatient if we're not talking about the data. We're not talking about the numbers up front.
Yeah. So again, the alignment is just so important. Is it like a board that wants you to be data driven, that wants to see conversion results? Are they brand building focused? Like align what you want to do, what your mission is, like what the CEO, like what's the plan for the company and your vision for marketing, and make sure to align that and present the data and like really ask the CEO or the board, like, can I be in the next meeting? I have some stuff I want to present. And of course, you need to keep it, you can talk about marketing for hours. Of course, you need to adapt to the time slot you're given and be like super focused and prepared as well. But as you say, you need to prove yourself first. They won't let you in their network before they like think you're good at what you're doing.
I want to now go back to one of the things that you talked about early on, which was actually interviewing the investors themselves. If you're a candidate, the founders, the employees, the board, doing the due diligence on the company that you're joining, and what are the things that you should be looking for? What are the red flags that from the side that you're considering an executive role in this company that you should be thinking about and checking those boxes off before you accept that role?
Yeah, I think it's good to ask what has been done within marketing before, if anything, depending on the history of the company. But what has been done previously? What do you think has been working well and or not so well? Just to get a perspective on their view on marketing, because again, marketing can be super fluffy to some people, or not, or just numbers driven, or yeah, it depends so much. So you need to understand the perspective, like the view on marketing, before you sign up to make it happen. Again, the goals, are they realistic or not? And it's difficult to know sometimes beforehand and before you really know the company whether the goals are realistic. But you need to know that the day you say, let's go for it, you sign up to actually reach the goals, it's going to be very stressful if you don't. If you miss the targets constantly, that's not going to be good for the company and not for you. And you put yourself in a really tough situation if you say yes to goals you know with time at least that this will be really difficult. It's not realistic. So definitely ask a lot of questions to understand the view on marketing, the goals, the expectations. That's very important. And then there are other questions like, what's the burn rate of the company? You can ask the CEO as well about that. But like, how long is the money going to last? And what needs to happen to get more money if it's investment backed?
What I'm going to ask is one of our last questions is what haven't we covered here across all of your experience from a startup CMO to your own entrepreneurial ventures to being on the investment companies and evaluating companies back and forth? What haven't we covered that you think would be important that we would know?
I think maybe the journey of actually building marketing from scratch, which is my driver in every work and job. I think many CMOs maybe always expect to have big teams and not doing as much like hands-on work themselves. But I would really like to emphasize that it's so much fun to create the base for a company and be on that journey, really doing everything from scratch from the beginning and then building the team and see the team grow and the company grow. It's extremely rewarding and fun. As a CMO, most CMOs are generalists, but if this forces you to stay updated on new trends, new tools, like what's happening with Google AdWords these days. So when AI is coming into it and ChatGPT, how can I appear on like SEO wise for that part. So I think it forces you to be on top of things and never lose like the pulse on what's happening within marketing when you build stuff from scratch. So I think CMOs should not be afraid of not having a team maybe for 1 or 2 years and just build it up step by step.
That can be scary. That's doing it all on your own, starting from
Yeah.
scratch,
Especially after
industries that are
2 years,
pretty
I feel
new.
like, yeah,
You
after a
know,
couple of years, I feel like I should have a team by now, but it's, I don't know, like I never get tired of it. It's so much more fun not having this manual or like feeling the shoes of someone else who had that role before. It's way more rewarding to build it yourself.
what would you say from all of these experiences? What are you the most proud of?
I think it is like the journeys where I've either been an advisor and setting some kind of base for startups or scale ups, or like now at GB Group, where I am, marketing barely existed. There was kind of an ugly logo and a really bad website when I started at this company, and just seeing it grow and like getting leads coming into us because of SEO work or case downloads or podcasts or whatever is happening. I think I'm really, yeah, I love seeing that happen, and it's really a lot of fun to feel like I put my fingers on that, and now it became big.
Seeing how it grows and being
Sorry.
involved in every part of that. So I'm going to ask you probably the hardest question of all here. If there were one thing of everything that we've talked about, and we've talked about a lot, if there was one thing that you wanted people to take away from this conversation today, what would that be?
Yeah, coming from where I come from startups and scale ups and the investment side, I would say a sustainable business where you stand on your own feet without investors, that will always beat. So yeah, I think that's one thing, and like really make sure you join companies that are healthy, like where you like the leadership, where the board is good. That way you can excel yourself in your work.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all the advice. And we just don't have the perspective of all of us of being investment backed, startup, entrepreneurial, starting from scratch. So I just appreciate it. And I know people are going to have additional questions. Would it be appropriate if we gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate all the time.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the talk.